If you're wondering how this new pricing model will affect your bottom line, how much you have to pay for Clay, and if it makes more sense for you to upgrade or stay on a legacy plan, reach out to me, book a call below, and I'll run a free audit with you, a free pricing audit to show you what you'd be paying on the new plan and what you could get versus what you're paying now. And we can figure out the best option for you to maximize your Clay at the best possible price. Hey, how's it going, guys? Jacob200 here from Sculpted. If you're watching this video, it's because Clay just announced a major change to their pricing model, and you might be thinking, why is this happening? What does this mean for me? Is Clay getting much more expensive, etc., etc.? It is a big shift. I think there's a lot of good coming out of this. I wanted to give you my perspective as a Clay expert who's been doing Clay for CRM for years now. I've been doing go-to-market for over a decade now, and past and current clients, and Doso, Nooks, other leading B2B SaaS companies. So I think I have what to share on this topic. Clay gave me this deck ahead of time to brief me of what's going on. This is really going through what pricing means for partners. But I think it's also helpful to walk through this and just share what it means for you, because really this is what the pricing change means for you, the customer. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing to share is the following. Data has been commoditized. So new startups are cropping up all over the place trying to solve the data problem. And I think, like Clay's saying in the slide, it's been a race to the bottom for data costs. So when Clay first started, one of their huge value props was waterfalling data providers. No longer do you have to rely on ZoomInfo for emails and phone numbers. You can go to 10 different email providers, 10 different mobile providers, and fix patchy coverage in different geos and different markets. That was a huge value proposition of Clay: coverage, accuracy, and costs, and no longer having to pay for giant enterprise contracts, etc. However, that over the last few years has become even more commoditized, especially with AI. Almost everything that I'm doing for customers in Clay is actually using Clayagent and ChatGPT to enrich the information. I'm not actually, in most cases, using Clay data. Sometimes I use tech stacks, and I almost always use LinkedIn data. But for the most part, 95% of the enrichments are actually coming from AI, which means the information is basically free. And currently, Clay's data model is actually, their pricing model, is actually based on how much data you use. You can use the whole platform and orchestrate all of your enrichments and all of your workflows in Clay without actually paying for any Clay credits, which is pretty wild. And so the pricing of the product is not necessarily tied to the value that they're offering. And with data becoming commoditized, pricing based on data isn't really reflecting the reality of the value that Clay brings to the table. And really what they're doing instead, like I just said, is they're helping you with execution. They're helping you with things like orchestrating data from all these different providers. The ads audiences feature they just launched that essentially allows you to create dynamic ads audiences using your CRM data, excluding customers, etc., driving cost per click, cost per acquisition down a ton. Those types of things are really where Clay's adding value at this point. The data is nice, but most people just hook in their own API keys and don't use the Clay data at all. If you're using it wisely and you're trying to save money, you can, in the past, easily get around all the Clay costs. I would tell my customers, use your own API keys for OpenAI, for emails, for phone numbers, almost everything I was suggesting to use your own API key. And therefore, you could get access to Clay and get all of this value, right, without really paying for it, which isn't really fair for Clay. It's actually an existential threat to the business model. And it's also not priced according to how customers use Clay. And it's sort of almost incentivizing. One of the primary value props was consolidate all of your your entire data stack into Clay. But it ended up being the opposite. You'd actually end up buying more and more providers because Clay itself wasn't priced in a way where it made sense to use Clay data. So you were actually using the orchestration but not paying for it. And what's pretty wild is that, as you can see here, cost per credit does not really scale down as you go up. It sort of starts out really high on tier 1 self-serve plans, and then it ends up going up, or it goes way down, then back up again. When you go from, Explorer to Pro to etc. to Enterprise, the cost per credit would scale down a bit into the self-serve plans, and then it would increase as you went to Enterprise, which didn't really make a ton of sense. And so they want to kind of smoothen out that curve. And so really what they're trying to do is four changes. They're going to simplify plan tiers. They're going to lower the cost of data in Clay. They're going to add a usage-based platform fee and also lower the cost of AI. So there's going to be a lot of talk from Clay about how they're lowering data costs in the platform, which is a good thing for many people, which is a good thing. They're also going to be adding a usage-based platform fee, which is going to be charged regardless of whether or not you're using Clay data or using your own API key. That's for sure the biggest change. In the past, you could literally hook in all of your API keys, use OpenAI, use any provider you wanted in Clay, and run as many rows as you wanted without being charged for any of it. you have to pay a base fee to use credits, to pay for credits for the month. But most people wouldn't even use their credits. They were just paying for basically the platform. Now they're changing that. The main difference is they're lowering the cost per credit for data credits. They're essentially giving it to you closer to wholesale cost, which actually might make it more realistic to actually use Clay credits. And instead, they're recuperating some of that money with a usage-based platform fee that they will charge as you use the platform more. Meaning every single sale that you run, you're paying for it with what they're going to call an action, which we'll get to in a second. So let's go through each one of these. The first thing is simplifying plan tiers. Currently, they have these tiers: free plan, starter plan, explorer, pro, and enterprise. They're going to be consolidating starter and explorer down into the launch plan at $185 a month. And they're going to be consolidating the pro plan down into the growth plan. And enterprise, of course, is going to stay the same. What does that mean for you in terms of features? So on the launch plan, growth plan, and enterprise plan, they're going to be adding a feature called functions to all of these plans, which I am super, super stoked about. Functions is massive. Essentially, it solves the problem of if you build a certain workflow in one table, let's say it's how you want to scrape companies for industry categorization, and you have a change in your nomenclature and you want to add a new industry or change definition. If you have that flow in multiple tables, you would have to go ahead and update every single table manually. Versus with functions, you update it in one place and it updates across all your tables. Another example is writing to your CRM. If you want to change your field mapping, you can do it in one function and it will reflect across all of your other instances of where you're writing data back to the CRM. Every time you want to write an account back to the CRM, you just pass it to your CRM, write back a function in Clay, and all the settings that are saved once and used throughout all of your other tables. And if you ever want to change the logic once, it's reflected everywhere. And that was kind of under wraps until now, and I think only available on higher plans. They're now launching that on all paid plans, which is going to be massive, massive time saver. That's huge. As you can see here, the other features break themselves down. You can go to the pricing page for that. I'm not going to spend time on this any further, but generally speaking, what they're trying to do is add more feature and functionality value in the plans and also bring the cost of data down. So as you move up in plan, you're unlocking, aside from unlocking more usage, more actions, essentially, more platform usage credits, if you will, you're also going to unlock more functionality, which is sort of why you would move up in plan, right? You want more functionality. So like I said, they're going to be lowering the cost of data. They're going to be dramatically reducing the credit costs, basically giving it to you at a wholesale price. Before, they were saying we give it to you at a discounted price. Practically speaking, Clay only made their margin when you would use credits. They baked their margin into their credits. So that wasn't really reflective of reality. Now, since they're adding this action step, they're able to actually dramatically lower the cost of credit. So the top 7 providers here, the top 7 data points, that most people use in Clay, you can see they're drastically cutting the cost. So enriched person is going down from 1 to 0.5 credits. Validate email is going down from 1 to just 0.1 credits. Find work email is going down from 2 to 0.8 credits. We can see the phone number is going down from 7 to 5 numbers in Wizza. Company revenue is going down 8 to 5. Company domain going down 1 to 0.5. So this is probably, I'm guessing, still has some margin baked into it, but much less than before. And they're able to do this because they want to give you more wholesale pricing and really incentivize you to actually use the data in Clay. And then they make their money from the platform fee. And that way, they're no longer dealing with this issue where they're really incentivizing you not to use the Clay data, even though one of the core value props of the platform is to use and consolidate all of your data tech into the Clay platform. So this move here, I think, will help with that. They're going to, of course, they'll recuperate some of the costs in the Clay plan. So how is they going to do that? Well, like we said, with a usage-based platform fee. The usage-based platform fee is essentially actions. So actions measure the highest value platform usage, enrichment, and GTM execution, or as we said, orchestration, right? And data credits are data credits, just that. They are used to actually enrich your data. I think they're going to be charging, this will probably vary by how many actions you have in your plan, but generally speaking, it's a few tenths of a penny per action, and the data credits are a few pennies. So let's say you still want to forego your data credits. If you're running 500,000 records a month through Clay, and you want to, you're spending 1/10 of a penny, maybe 3/10 of a penny or something like that on, let's say it's 2.5. Let's say it's a fourth of a penny to run per action, right? So you're paying $12.50 a month now to run 500,000 records through the plan. So if you're paying a quarter of a penny per action, which is, they say here is a few tenths of a penny. They haven't been specific yet in this deck, but let's say it's a quarter of a penny, and you're running 500,000 records a month. You're paying $12.50 a month. That's a lot of usage. Even my big cleanup clients that are doing a few 100,000 records, right? Let's say they have 200,000 CRM records. That's not a ton of cost. A few tenths of a penny, right? It's like $400 or $500, and then you add on the cheaper data credits. I don't think the actual total cost is really materially changing so much. It's really the only people that I think are really going to feel this pain, right? You could ask yourself the question. So based on this, who's really going to feel the pain? Who's going to be pissed off? Who's going to be upset about this versus who's not going to be upset about this? I think people who are on the lower end of usage, who are trying to, on a low budget, sort of hack their way through the platform and save as much money as possible, but are actually running tons of rows through Clay and are used to paying a few $100 for that, are going to be upset because now they have to pay maybe from a few $100 a month to thousands or 1,000 or 1.5 thousand. So for them, it could be a 5, 10, 20x increase. But if you think about it, they kind of were milking the platform, and actually Clay themselves was probably losing money because they have infrastructure costs, server costs, etc. every time you run a record through their platform. Even if you don't use a Clay credit, they still are paying for you to actually be, that's how it works, right? They have to pay AWS or whoever for the usage. And so they're actually losing money on many customers. So this is, I think, a fair way for those folks to pay up, if you will, or reduce their usage. But they're going to be paying according to their value. And everyone else that's using it anyway, I don't think this is going to really be a material change to your bottom line quote, let's say, monthly, especially on the higher end enterprise side of things. To me, it feels like, especially when you factor in the data credit savings, if you're consolidating your tech stack into Clay, getting rid of ZoomInfo, Apollo, etc., and just using Clay, it might be actually a more attractive plan for you. In terms of what actions are going to be counted as, right? When is an action charged? So essentially, finding and importing records is free. It's unlimited. Importing first-party data, meaning your CRM data, for example, is unlimited. And transforming data inside Clay, I think that means using formulas, essentially, is free. The two highest value-add platform usage features are enriching with third-party data, so LinkedIn data, Clayagent, AI, etc., or exporting somewhere else to go back to your system for GTM. So going to the CRM, going to the sequences. I think exporting a CSV. I'm not sure if they'll charge an action for that. That would be interesting if they do that. I think exporting probably to your CRM, to Smartly, to the sequencing tools is likely where you're going to be charged an action, because that is an event that could be automated, and now you're having this always on automated go-to-market motion going that they want to capitalize on the value add there. I have a feeling CSV exports will not be charged actions. If they will, that would be interesting. You can see here a better breakdown of actions. Actions measure platform credits. Actions measure platform usage credits. Actions measure platform usage and credits by data or AI from the third-party vendors, right? So as you can see here, once again, import from CRM, source accounts, etc., free. Transforming with a formula or looking up in a CRM, free. However, enriching with LinkedIn or email, what have you, an action. And GTM execution, we're also going to be paying for syncing to CRM, sequencing to email, syncing audiences to ads providers, and triggering Slack to a rep actually will cost an action as well. Because really, the new pricing reflects the product's evolution, which is data comes in, Clay orchestrates it, and it goes out to your execution. So this is for partners to help us understand how to prepare a quote for clients, but I think this also helps you just calculate how much you're going to be spending on Clay. It's basically the same thing, how many records you have to enrich, right? The data you need on those records, and then the actual expected cost per data point, etc., or actions that are going to happen for each play. Multiply it all together, and you have yourself your pricing. The last big change is going to be AI. They see here that the cost of AI is usually like very high for an outlying small minority of customers that use AI a lot and super high models, but most people are actually not using it so much. But the flat rate of the pricing is much higher for most people. Most people are overpaying actually for their AI. And so what Clay wants to do is lower prices for flat rate AI models, and then the more sophisticated models will actually move to variable pricing. So I'll explain what this means. Flat rate models, 80% of models are going to have flat rate pricing. That means lower credit costs than they have today, and that includes all clay models, so nano, helium, etc. You're going to see lower credit costs. More sophisticated models that use more data, more processing power, and therefore are more expensive over on this end of the spectrum that are today currently, a lot of people are the people in this section who are using it like crazy are actually underpaying. So they need to have their price raised a bit. And so what's going to happen is Clay's going to add variable pricing to these types of Clay will add variable pricing to these types of runs. So, for example, they're going to charge you the realized cost of the AI run plus 20% to cover their overhead, payments, etc. And the actual row level credit actuals will be visible in the product to test and deploy at scale before you run. So that way you can actually test and get an average of how much it's really going to cost per record, etc. And in general, 80% plus of customers who are in this part of the curve are going to actually save on cost. So what does variable mean in layman's terms? It means you're just the same way that you pay OpenAI a variable cost when you run a record as it changes for each prompt, each time you use the API key and you're sending information in. The text, the token count is different, the processing amount is different, the number of tokens used is different, and the model itself is different. And so it's variable, right? Clay is basically charging you that variable cost plus 20% for their overhead. So it's more reflective of reality, and it's more along the lines of what most of our customers, actually all our customers, are doing today, which is using their own API key, which this actually I think makes it much more reasonable. So that's that. I think in terms of, what does this mean for you? I think it means that we have to wait and see. I'm not sure how the math will actually fall out. I have to see how it starts affecting my customers, and I'll run. They haven't really published their actual pricing yet, so I'll have to make follow-up videos to share with you how that looks. But I do think that this is going to change things a bit. It's going to be more reflective of how people use Clay and more pricing more in line with the value that Clay adds. That being said, given that a lot of people have found workarounds to try and avoid paying Clay, those people are going to feel probably the pain of having to cough up more money for the same usage. However, most people I don't think will notice a difference, and frankly, I think this is actually a better solution, especially given that they are leaning more into the features and functionality that Clay offers and orchestration over the data itself, which I think also is more of a value proposition. Like if they spend less time adding more and more for native integrations, and they spend less time on new integrations, they spend more time on the actual platform, making it easier to use, easier to set up. I think that would be a huge win and make it a lot easier for them and easier for our customers too. So the last thing I want to share is this. Existing customers can stay on legacy plans if it's advantageous to do so. That means existing customers can stay self-serve. There's no forced migration. You will stay on your current plan by default, and you can move to new plans at any time. And you can also switch to new plan on the legacy model by April 10th. So that's 30 days from the pricing launch, which basically means if you want to even upgrade to Pro, for example, the legacy Pro plan, they'll give you time to do that. Even if you are on a legacy plan and you want to change your legacy plan, even within 30 days of this announcement, they're going to allow you to change, which is very nice. Enterprise customers, they're going to have to work with their growth strategist to review pricing at renewal and figure out what makes the most sense. And if you're an existing enterprise evaluation, GTM engineers will work with customers to determine the most advantageous pricing. So I think they're being pretty generous here in terms of honoring existing quotes that are out, allowing you to stay on legacy plans and adjust your plan as well in the meantime. But overall, I think this is actually a good move, and I'm curious to see how it really impacts individuals' bill and what the community does as they react. I think a lot of Clay experts will be defending it like me. Perhaps some customers will be pro this move. Some customers will not be happy with it. A lot of new customers, I think Clay is still early in their adoption curve, to be honest. Not maybe early, maybe in the middle, but there's still lots of people to adopt Clay that have yet to even hear about it and don't even know what the pricing is, so they won't really care. And by the way, this also aligns very well with how like Zapier and all these other tools or Snowflake, how they have a usage-based credit or a usage-based fee. That's the whole point, because they're orchestration tools. And so more than just the data you're paying for on the platform, I think having an action cost is pretty fair and actually makes a lot of sense. That's all from me. I'll stay tuned. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.